The big newsmaker of the day, America's ambassador to India, Garcetti, feels that both the nations should focus on frictionless trade ties rather than enjoying small trade dispute wins. He spoke with my colleague Parikshit Luthra exclusively, and he touched upon issues ranging from the upcoming G20 summit, India's Semicon drive, Modi government's IT hardware import curbs, and much more.
New Delhi is getting ready to host the G20 summit on the 9th and 10th of September, and playing a very important role there will be US President Joe Biden, who will be arriving in New Delhi on the 7th, and he will be here till the 10th of September. Joining us to talk about the US contribution to the G20 and the larger US-India relationship going forward and the key messages for India-US business and trade relationship is Garcetti, US Ambassador to India. Mr. Garcetti, thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Ambassador, I'd like to begin by asking you, what will be the key message that President Biden will bring to India? Tell us about his agenda from 7th to the 10th of September.
Well, we're so excited to have the president here, who's been here many times, but never as president in India, to celebrate not only the energy that came out of the bilateral visit, the state visit in Washington, but really to celebrate India's leadership of G20 and our joint leadership in the world. You know, it's not India plus the United States. It's India times the United States. When we get together, whether it's health, whether it's the economy, whether it's strategic defense, whether it's the climate work and women's empowerment, we can do a multiplicative amount together. And so I think the first message will be is this is the US-India moment. America loves India, India loves America. But second, it's to lift up the priorities that India is focused on within G20. Everything from the Prime Minister's Life Initiative and looking at what we can do with our personal behavior to improve the environment, to the way that digital infrastructure is changing the way people live here. This is a great moment for our president to witness the new India and also to look at raising our ambitions, even more than we saw in June, which is a new height that we've never been to before.
I'd like to ask you about the progress that has been made on the G20 so far. Any areas where you are really hoping for substantial outcomes? And as far as the Ukraine-Russia war goes, do you think there can be any communique without strong condemnation of the Ukraine-Russia war?
Well, on that point, no, of course not. This is a line that's been crossed. It's a principle in the globe. Indians know how important sovereignty and borders are. And so we are standing up for that principle with so many partners around the world and across G20. That shouldn't also limit our ability to talk about other things, to look at everything from food, health, debt, looking at infrastructure, the climate crisis, women's empowerment. And India's done a beautiful job in 60 different cities of really raising these questions with key leaders for months ahead. So looking at what's coming out, a high priority for us, of course, is an Indo-Pacific region that's open, free, and fair for everybody. Secondly, looking at ways that we can ensure that the global economic system works for everybody. That's really what the G20 was about, the largest economies of the world. But third, too, to make sure that rules matter. In the global system, without rules, there's chaos. And I think we, as two democracies, people who respect international law, can really model that in a very powerful way.
Right. US and India have never been as close as they are today in terms of business, in terms of trade, in terms of politics, in terms of international affairs as well. If there would be one key vision that you would have for India-US business and trade ties, Ambassador Garcetti, what would that be?
I think we have to go beyond celebrating the end of small trade wars and getting rid of tariffs and conflicts to really building an architecture for the future. If India is going to be a great global economic power, an important supplier in the global supply chain, the innovator for the critical emerging technologies that we're working on together, for our universities and our companies to work together, I think we have to make this a frictionless relationship, one in which Indian goods and services flow freely into the United States and vice versa. There's problems on both sides. We have bureaucracies, old rules in America and in India that sometimes say, okay, we could do this, but it's an exception. We have to make it the rule, not the exception. And I think we'll see billions of dollars building on the record amount of trade, building on the record investments that we have, everything from semiconductors to quantum, agriculture, to the ways that we can do things in space, as we so beautifully witnessed this week here on the moon.
Now, we've seen American companies facing a bit of a setback in the last few weeks because of Indian government's restrictions on import of IT hardware, computer, laptops, and servers as well. What would be your recommendation? Has there been any discussion with the Indian government on this? Has Catherine Tai raised this? And do you think this could be raised in the upcoming visit of the president as well?
We're absolutely engaged. And first and foremost, since we're friends, we want to listen. Where are you trying to go with this policy, and how can we get there together? Similar to the data legislation that came up, when we gave feedback, we were able to help have a discussion together and improve it in a way that works great for India and Indians, but with trusted geography also doesn't limit our friendship and our trade. I would say the same thing. This is good not only because of the laptops that might be sold, but for a company that wants to set up investment here, they need to buy laptops. This becomes a tax on them potentially. How can we achieve those goals, make sure it doesn't hurt the US-India relationship, and achieves what I believe India's goals are, which is to manufacture more here, diversify the global supply chain. I'm confident we can get there together if we keep listening and cooperating.
But do you see this as a setback for companies wanting to sell more here in India? And at the same time, does this send out mixed signals of what we're trying to do?
Were it to go through, I think that is a fair thing we're hearing from many of our companies. Wait a second, whether they're companies that sell laptops and sell tablets, or whether the ones that buy them in country for creating Indian jobs in cities where they're opening offices and adding investments. A semiconductor company needs to buy laptops for their employees. An electric vehicle entity will want to have tablets. And so it's a tax on doing business potentially in India, and we want to make sure that there's nothing that holds back American investment here in India to create jobs here in India and vice versa.
My final set of questions. Tesla has been keenly exploring the Indian market. What is your sense of where have we reached with the talks with Tesla? Could they set up shop? And what about reducing tariffs for the company?
Well, we're excited that there's an office that they've already taken out in Maharashtra. I'm confident that Tesla and other American manufacturers of electric cars can come here. And I think it's important for India. And the message I've heard from Tesla, and I've worked with them for many years, know Elon well, is that they want an infrastructure that doesn't just favor them, but that helps anybody come in here and achieve India's goals of getting the charging infrastructure and the manufacturing base. You can't just do that by saying, mandate, you do it this way. You have to help companies make some money in the first few years to justify the investment in later years. But I love the engagement Prime Minister has had directly, that his office has had, and I'm very optimistic that will work.
US has often spoken about friendshoring, and India is a key partner there. Do you see more investments coming from US companies into India? Any key sectors do you see those investments coming in? What about semiconductors? Is there going to be another big announcement soon?
Absolutely. There's hardly a week that goes by that there's not an American company in the semiconductor space wanting to do more here. $1 billion already of announced investments. But I'd like to see that accelerate more. We want to work with the Indian government to not just talk about the back end where you design, the front end when you package, but that complex middle where that requires the workforce and the training, the skilling, but also the regulations that guarantee over a 10 or 20-year period of time the rules won't change, because you don't make money up front in semiconductors. It takes years of investment in people and in equipment to get there. But I think there's other great sectors. Renewable energy, we're excited about green hydrogen here and Indian investment in that in the United States. Electric vehicles, I look forward to the day that not only American electric vehicles are here, but Indian electric vehicles are being made in the United States. So really, the sky's the limit, or maybe because Vikram landed on the moon, the sky's no longer the limit. It is really the heavens that we can do.
Right. And finally, any work on the IPEF that you see, any progress?
We see great signs from India, already part of 3 of the 4 pillars. That 4th pillar, we're hearing great things and a great intention from India. We would hope all 4 pillars India would be a part of and be the co-architects of this moment. Forget just looking at narrow agreements. Let's look at new rules that, again, will make this easier to invest, easier to create jobs, easier to help everybody prosper. And we can't do this without India, but stay tuned. I think we're going to have good news there.
Right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Garcetti, for joining us.
And on that note, it's time for a short break, but don't go anywhere. News and updates continue when we return. Stay tuned.